take it ahead of us. Let's bring it in. 1, 2, 3, ideal!
Oh my god! Oh my god!
Oh my god!
So yesterday, we did our second coat of mud on our seams. So that's where you put tape where the two pieces of drywall join together. And it's basically just to like flatten it out and make it look like it's one solid wall. You'd never know that there was two pieces joined together. Yeah, so, and then I also did the windows. He just always has to be in my videos. We put mud around all of the windows, and where we put like the corner beads, they kind of stick out a little bit. So you have to try to put a lot of mud on there, really cake it on and just smooth it out and make that area flat so that you can't tell that that little lip is there. So that that's something that I did. That's not very easy to do, but I feel like I've gotten really good at that.
Yeah, so I was going to ask you about that. So here you guys are doing sanding after the second coat, right?
Right. Every time that we're going to apply another coat, we need to sand it down a little bit. And it's honestly, it's not to like make it like flat, like, and take away all the mud that we put on. It's just to take away like any like big bumps or any clumps or what are they call them, boogers. And just kind of to smooth the edges a little bit. So when we put that the last and final coat before we are able to texture, it's just to fan it out and just to smooth it out. Yeah, on our first build, it took us a really long time. I'll go again in a second. On our first build, it took a really long time because we obviously had no idea what we were doing. And unfortunately, there wasn't really anything to go by either. So we didn't have like a wall to touch or a certain technique that was shown to us. You know, Nelson and even Austin and Rick tried to help, but it's hard until you get to do it yourself and you really get like to the feel for it and you understand what's going on and what you're actually looking for. I think it took us like 5 days of just sanding and mudding and sanding, and then Dan would come in and he'd be like, oh, that's terrible. I wouldn't sell any of these houses. Do it again. So, you know, it took a long time. But now I think that with the third one, we're not taking that many days. It's literally just the 1 day to do what you got to do, let it dry, go work on the roof, come back tomorrow, sand a little bit. So it's not so bad.
Is that because you guys have the previous experiences to build off of?
Yeah. And we actually know what we're looking for. Like, I know when we go into other people's houses and we switch partnerships and you see what other people have done, you're just kind of like, oh, wow, like, this looks really nice, or vice versa. And you're just like, I've got to do some work on it. You really get a good understanding of what you're supposed to be doing. So I think it does make it easier. So here, I'm just going over the seams, like on the edges. Like you can see right here where it's like really thick. So we'll just sand that down a little bit. It doesn't have to be super intense. It's just kind of to flatten it out just a little bit. So that's pretty good right there. So when we go back on our third coat right now, oops, I'm sorry. The knife is just gonna spread nice. There's not gonna be any bumps because then it'll leave things like this here on the wall to leave lines.
So when you use the knife to check it afterwards, it's kind of like a test, right?
What do you mean?
Like it's a test to make sure that like the knife just goes down smoothly.
Oh yeah.
To test the wall and make sure that you're good to go.
Yeah. Well, and the point is too is that you want it to look flat. You know, so there's, I don't know if you can tell, but there's a joint right here and there's a little divot in the wall. And so if I sand this down too much, then all that mud that we put there to hide that joint is it's just gonna go away, and then it's gonna reveal that joint again, which is not the point. So, like I said, this is why I'm more focused on the edges or any lines like this. Just kind of smooth that out. So when we do go over it again, the middle of it where there's still that little divot is probably gonna have a little bit more mud. And then once we get out, we're gonna spread the mud out farther to make the joint disappear, basically.
So it's a balance between not too much sanding and not too little sanding.
Yeah, exactly. And that's like the nice thing about doing this so many times too, is that you learned. I think on the first one we spent so much time sanding because we didn't understand that it didn't have to be completely smooth again. So I think we spent a lot of time just doing the same thing over and over again. But I mean, it's a learning process, right? That's the whole point of the school, is that you're doing things to learn. And as with anything else that we've done, you know, like even with the framework, if your frame was wrong or you put the window in the wrong spot, you had to go and you had to pull all that wood apart and do it again. So, you know, it is what it is. But now we know what we're doing, so it's easier and we're not spending so much time on it. Oh my gosh, that's a lot. Hey, Emilio. I'll need your help with this corner probably later. There's a lot of mud. Forget it. Like, it's just a glob of it. So, just because it's like at an angle in the corner, it's a little bit harder to get to. And then at my height, like, I don't think that yeah. I might have to get a ladder. Oy. And
Yeah, you're gonna need some muscle for that.
yeah, just like be like on top of it so I can like actually like scrub it out. But that's fine. I know it's there and it needs a little work, so no biggie. We'll fix it.
This morning we are squished up on the roof. We are building a parapet roof, meaning that all the sides are going to drain to one point, to our scupper down there. So when you have all sides draining like that, it's called a parapet. And apparently it's only common here in the Southwest. You won't really find it. Other places in the country you may, but it's most common here.
Why is that?
It's a good question. I'm going to cheat a little bit. You'll ask me again. We'll fill it in later.
Okay. You're just kind of just basically a roof coming down at an angle to feed the scupper.
Yes, sir. So we got 3 initial cuts for the corners and the one in the middle. And then we just fill in the spaces. So we cut pieces to where they're going to meet up with our cuts that go straight to the scupper. And this makes the perfect outline or studs for our plywood when we finally put plywood up there. So now we got our angle cut in there. So now, once we butt it up here, it's gonna fit nice. Nice and tight.
Very cool. And then what comes next? The nails?
Yep. Now we're gonna toenail it in. Toenail it in. I'm gonna check for squareness one more time. Looking good. All right.
Okay, you're actually nailing into the roof, huh?
Yep. I'm nailing where I know my eye joists are. So I'm going into something sturdy instead of just hanging through the plywood. So I see my previous nails, so I know there's an eye joist right here. So now for the next piece. We have 2 more pieces to go. I got them measured so I know what size I need to cut them to. We're gonna get them cut, bring them back up and install. The speed square.
Speed square.
Perfect for precision cuts.
How did that go?
Pretty smoothly. When you use the speed square to cut, you have a straight edge, so you get a straight cut. This little guard right there sits flush, and it guides it so you don't move around. So it's a pretty handy tool. I like it.
With the wonderful works of cutting and shortening videos, it looks like we get all this stuff done really quickly, but the reality is that it takes time. And you know, depending on whoever was mudding, if they caked on a lot of stuff and they didn't smooth it out, you know, you really have to work on it.
But the point of the fact of the matter is that the reality is that there's a tremendous amount of work involved, right?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. You know, and it's all process too, so it's not just about working quickly, it's also about working efficiently and making sure that, you know, you get things done correctly, because, you know, going back and either fixing a person's mistake or, you know, just going back to touch something up that could have been done a little bit more slowly or with a little bit more care in the first place, then you wouldn't have to focus so much on it. It wouldn't take up so much of your time. But you know, again, it's all part of the learning process, and it's, you know, not necessarily a negative thing, but it just, I think it's a good way to show you how you can improve on your own process, depending on whatever it is that you're doing, right?
All part of the reality.
Right, yeah. And I think that in the future will create better workers. You know, it's having that sense of accountability and seeing, you know, going back and realizing like, oh man, like I could have done this a little bit better. Or if it was somebody else, you know, and approaching them and being like, hey, can I give you some advice? Like, I saw this and, you know, this is what I have found helpful. Can I show you and offer a suggestion? So Emilio and I are almost done with the sanding. There's just a couple spots where he made it really thick. So we just gotta sand it down a little, but you know, it's almost there. And we'll get to mudding soon. It feels pretty good. It's a really big confidence booster. You know, at least for myself, I can't speak for everybody, but it feels like I'm one step closer to being like, okay, I feel confident in saying that I can build my own house. I don't know, I think it's really neat because if I wanted to, I could like visit a job site or something and I'll have an understanding of what's even going on. It's not just gonna be like all this stuff and I'm like, okay, cool, like this is all being built. If I go, and we have gone once, and it's fascinating because then you really can appreciate it and you're just like, wow, okay, look at how they did that. Look at, oh, I know how to do that. And then you also pick things out and you're like, hey, why didn't they do this? This is what we were taught. Like, what's going on here, you know? So I think it gives you a deeper understanding of things and it also gives you an appreciation for what people in these trades do and, you know, what you can look forward to, or if you're working with somebody and again, you know, they're not doing some things that you learned, you can offer suggestions, or if they're doing something like even better than you are, you're like, hey, show me how you did that. So it's cool. It's a really cool process. I've enjoyed it.
One final construction question. Just as an example, the Mayan pyramids, who built those? Was it the Mayans, aliens, or Tupac Shakur?
I knew you were going to come out with some dad joke. You had to, didn't you?